Good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. here at Frederick School. First order of business, I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Albert.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Nash.
Here.
Okay, that gives us a quorum. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next I need a motion to approve the agenda and the personnel addendum that we got earlier this afternoon.
So moved.
Second.
Miller.
Aye.
Albert.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay. Next we have public comment. Do we have anybody signed up? No? Okay. Then we have a presentation for Care Solace.
Hello. He gave me an easier one green button. I can't screw that up. We ready? Good evening. I am going to talk with you about a new company that our district is working with called Care Solace. And a reminder of our mission. And I believe our work in creating equity and cultivating community directly correlates to the work that we're doing with Care Solace. As far as what drove us to the decision of partnering with the company Care Solace, I'm going to reference some background of the needs that we've been seeing in our district and community and across the nation, really. We have been seeing overall an uptick in the incident rate of students and family members and others that we know in our community that have had increased needs for mental health supports. Unfortunately, while the incident rate has increased, the accessibility to services and providers has decreased. Oftentimes it's not having a strong toolbox full of tools, limiting our access to know who's out there to provide services for our students. It can be long wait times. Some providers have wait lists and some don't accept new patients. It's just their volume's too great right now. So what is Care Solace? Essentially, Care Solace serves as a vehicle for families, and I'm just going to call those adults. So it could be an adult staff member, it can be an adult parent or guardian. So I'm going to speak to adults tonight. And essentially, an adult has an identified conversation about a need in the family. Needing some outside services. And it could be through problem solving, it could just be an identified need that they've reached out to one of our mental health providers in our district and needed some access to some supports. So Care Solace serves as a vehicle from that point of contact to receiving connections with outside providers. When I speak to who our mental health providers are, in that umbrella essentially are anyone who's on our mental health committee. It includes our psychologists, our social workers, all of our building principals have access to utilize the system, and me. And then there are two pathways to which any adult can access services or start that process to initiate seeking a provider. Solace has accessibility it allows accessibility for all staff, students, families, and it includes not only a student, but maybe their parents or siblings or what have you have access to utilize Solace. And what essentially it does is it evaluates the adult's circumstances. It could be gender, it could be culture, it could be transportation means, insurance, and those kind of resources, and creates a match of providers to offer the next layer of services outside the school system. For example, transportation, while they don't provide transportation, they may say, we can help you work through the public transit system to figure out how we can get you to where you need to get. And there are a variety of virtual options as well within the system of resources. And then it provides communication and connection between the district mental health providers as well as with the care companions, and I'm going to talk about what those are next. But it creates that communication workflow so we can both parallel our support for our families. I want to also share that Solace is IDEA funded, so it's built into our grant. And I am now going to speak to how you initiate support. So there's two pathways, as I shared, to receive the vehicle access to get to the outside providers. One being what they call a warm handoff pathway. Warm handoff is a common term used in the medical field where one medical provider or mental health provider hands off a case to another provider. So they use that term with the Solace vendor as well. So if I am a social worker and I have an identified need and adult and I have had conversation, I've received consent to share information from the parent, I will then go into the system and click start a warm handoff. That consent allows me to then populate gender, ethnicity, language needs, and similar demographics for that case. And once I hit that, the next steps initiate, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The other pathway is an anonymous pathway, and this way, anybody in our community, adults, can go into the website or make a phone call. There's a 1-888 number, and that is an anonymous pathway where someone can go in and click in and put their own information in. This is for families or adults who don't feel the urge to share what's going on in their families with another provider or a mental health support in the school. So they go ahead and go through the anonymous pathway to do that. It is truly anonymous, so the benefit is no one really knows, and they get the process going as they would if they went through the warm handoff pathway. The negative is it really is anonymous. So if they lose provider lists or something like that, they really have no one to call within Solace to access that information. So that is kind of the cost and benefit to that anonymous pathway. I keep wanting to turn the mic off. So once that either pathway is initiated, a call is initiated from Solace, from a screener, and that is within 15 minutes of pressing send. And then there's a screening with the adult, and the adult is going to be asked questions about preferences. For example, I might be a person who needs someone who is my same gender, and I feel more comfortable talking to someone of my gender. So they're going to screen for those kind of examples to make sure they can build a list of providers that best match the person's preferences and needs. Then there's an assignment to an actual care companion, and the care companion stays with the case for the duration of the process in receiving care from an outside provider. And additionally, that provider list is shared with the adult from the care companion. And then the care companion does follow-ups just prior to any appointments, just after the initial appointment, and then weeks later to make sure that it's a solid match, because they want to be able to change or adjust in any way necessary. What you see here is a sample of a dashboard. We used demo information here. Those who can see this are anyone who has initiated a handoff. So in our system right now, we have our social workers, our psychologists, our building principals, assistant principals, me, and I've also started to add our deans in because we want them connected to this work. So what you'll see here is a button to start a new handoff. And if I made some referrals through warm handoff, then I will see a list of students, and I can monitor the progress they are in between handoff to receiving services from an outside provider. So that's what you'll see here. And then underneath each student, you can see case details. So the next toggle, once I click those case details, I can actually look at a running list of all the communication between the care companion and the adult. And it could be the adult and or the mental health provider. So like I said, that communication is a three-way experience because we want that wraparound support for our families. Here's an example of the utilization content. I have access to see this and monitor what is our use. It helps me kind of see what's going on in our community so we can not only respond effectively, but be preemptive in the work that we're doing as a mental health committee and in our related services across our district. So what you'll see here is a count of warm handoffs. We get to see family-initiated cases, and that could be I initiate a case for myself. I would count as a family-initiated case as a staff member. And then there's the anonymous searches, and you can see all the communications that have gone back and forth. So you can really monitor what kind of workflow is going on within the system. And then there is a bar graph of the different types of mental health needs based on that screener. And so we can kind of see what's going on out there. It's pretty informative in our practice. Here we get to look at the breakdown of ethnicity, gender, and age group. And then we also get to view what are the top 10 insurances that are being utilized by our families or staff members. And then what are the top providers that our referrals have been connected with. So we can kind of monitor that as we go. The insurance providers include not only insurance, but also Medicaid and Medicare, as well as no insurance on a sliding scale. So all those opportunities are available to our families. So specific to CCSD 46, we went live officially mid to late April. And since then, we've had both warm handoffs and anonymous pathways utilized in both April and in May so far. We've seen evidence of multiple insurances represented, as well as various demographics, and multiple building utilization is going on. But I should remind you that it's really based on where the needs are presenting themselves. But we are seeing it across our district. And then lastly, Leslie's been very good at setting out social media blasts, reminding our community of the resource and the tool and how to access that. And we have seen correlations after each of her media posts for that. And then additionally, we saw an uptick in referrals, both anonymous pathways and warm handoffs after Dr. Glickman's recent district communication about the shooting on May 24th, 2022. Do any of you have any questions?
I do. So you stated that you can look at the dashboard and see the case itself. Right?
Correct.
What data do you get out of that? You just get there's been phone calls and people added, but you don't get the specifics of the call or of the case, right?
Correct. It's really just the information that it takes in communication from the point of handoff to the point of seeing an outside provider. Anything beyond that, we would have to receive a consent to communicate with the outside provider as a district, and that is based on parent preference, or adult preference, I should say.
I just wanted to make that clear so that none of anybody who might have came in late don't think that your personal data is getting shared with the school district or the communication going back and forth between your therapist and whoever needs to be known about it is not being
Correct.
brought into District 46. It is completely anonymous, and we want people to use it.
Yes.
We just want to make sure they know that their data is secure.
Yes, we adhere to all privacy and confidentiality rules based on the Illinois Student Records Act, and we would need permissions to do various things, including communicate with outside providers, which would be separate from the permission we have to hand off a case.
So as a quick summary, and Heather can tell me if I have this right, if it's an anonymous case, it's anonymous.
Correct.
We're not seeing any information at all, really, right, except knowing that there's an anonymous case. If it's a case that our school district has initiated, we can see the progress of when the family is actually getting support. And that's what we see, is that we initiated, hey, this is a family that could use some support, and then we're able to see what happens until they get the support.
Correct.
So that's what we're able to see, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. And that includes all the texts, the emails, the phone calls, and then there can be some notes regarding those exchanges and the progress along the way.
But just that they have occurred, that there's been a phone
Correct.
call, there's been a
Not
text.
the nature of the
not the
content
nature,
is,
right.
that's not included.
Yep.
And I also want to add the data that we see in our dashboard in regards to case-by-case views, we only see those for students when those referrals are made. We don't see any family members, and we don't see any staff members that may have gone through the referral process.
Heather, if there's an outside provider, how does the outside provider link up with Solace?
So they have this insanely large database. And in fact, if we know someone who's not in the group, we can refer that, and they will then connect with those outside providers to verify whether they want to be a part of Solace's resource bank. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and it leads to another one. I'm curious if the original problem is a lack of capacity by those caregivers. Long response times, long wait times, long client lists. How does this alleviate that or build capacity, or is that not the purpose of it?
I think it's twofold. I think you're right. There is a lack of capacity. Providers are way overbooked. But I think there's also limitations on how many people we know are out there as an entity, and we tend to make referrals about the ones we know. And Solace actually builds capacity in the amount of resource access they have. So they have a far greater option of providers to choose from that we didn't even know were out there. So it's really helping us broaden what we can connect our families with.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mrs. Lorenzo.
Hi.
Nice job. I have two questions. I know that we're looking at sample data here, but for the dashboards that you've been able to review, does the actual utilization data reflect the demographics of our community?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And then the second question I had, you indicated this was IDEA funded.
Correct.
So when we see the insurance providers listed, is that like a subrogation, a recovery, reimbursement type thing happening for those who are insured?
Yeah, there's no financial connection to the district. It really is just our way to view how many different types of families and their resources available to them that we're able to reach. It just kind of gives us a little sense of what resources our families are utilizing to reach their outside providers.
Gotcha. So we're not per se going after like Blue Cross Blue Shield
Correct.
for reimbursement or whatever. Okay.
Correct.
Tamika, are you wanting to know what IDEA is paying for?
Well, as I understand, it's this Care Solace is fully funded.
So we have contracted with Care Solace to provide this service. So the school district is paying the service, and we are getting our reimbursement through the IDEA grant. So it's funded through the grant, but there's still a cost, but it's not using local funds, it's using the IDEA funds instead. So it's grant funded.
Okay, and then in the event that the families taking advantage of this are insured, it's not like we are subrogating
We're
against
not,
their insurance?
right, exactly.
Okay.
It's just that supporting our families in this way by giving them this connection to providers that they might not otherwise connect with, that's what we're paying for.
Okay, yeah,
It's
I just
it's
wanted to
the
make sure we
actual
weren't
vendor.
offering a service and then on the back end, kind of circling back to their provider for reimbursement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct, correct.
you.
They do essentially, Care Solace essentially does the matching based on their available resources and their preferences. So that happens at that screening level right after the handoff occurs.
So Care Solace will, if this is a family with, whatever, universal, whatever, a certain health insurance, Care Solace will only connect them with providers that will use that health insurance. Yeah. And there are some, if the family doesn't have health insurance at all, they'll be connected with a provider that will accept them on a sliding scale. I can't say.
Sliding scale.
Sliding scale. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Just thinking about it.
Can I just ask, I think this is an obvious question, but I think it bears articulating. How does this help us in the classroom? How does it, can you bring it back to our classroom?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Because we've seen this uptick in students and families who have various ranges of mental health needs, we are seeing that evidence in either behaviors or emotionality at school, which we're having to respond to. And we only have so much wherewithal within 8 to 3 every day. And oftentimes families are really struggling to get that other wraparound support that is necessary for some cases. And it provides that. So it's offering another resource to really provide a wraparound service model for our families. And in essence, we should see improvement because they're getting support on from both of those angles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next up is board reports.
Good evening. All right, so the sun's hitting me right at the right angle. So my apologies if I trip up over anything. I wanted to touch on a couple things. So one, so June's a pretty big month. June represents Pride Month. June also represents Juneteenth or June 19th. So I wanted to kind of just share a perspective, something that's been on my mind, heart, and spirit in lieu of everything that we have witnessed as a country and specifically experiencing as a community as it pertains to Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York. In a world filled with hate, we must dare to hope. In a world filled with anger, we must still dare to comfort. In a world filled with despair, we must still dare to dream. And in a world filled with distrust, we must still dare to believe. So I know that our communities are experiencing different levels of grief and needing support. So I thank Mrs. Lorenzo and her team for making sure that the social, emotional needs of our community, and more specifically our students, are being met. And I just wanted our community to hear that in lieu of everything going on around us, that we are still 1D46. We are still here as a board to support our community. I'm really excited about the Pride Parade, albeit I have a conflict, so I won't be in attendance, as well as Juneteenth. But I know the board and our community will represent Grayslake and the D46 community at large very well. The last thing that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention is we had our last Equity and Inclusion Committee meeting just this past week or 2 weeks ago. It's a blur. It's a blur. But I want to personally thank Mr. Lewis for all he's done to lead the committee through the years, and you've certainly been a really great advocate for this important work in the district, and your leadership will be missed. I know we have Mrs. Gluck has some big shoes to fill coming in, but you positioned us well for the future. One thing that I didn't bring to the Equity Committee, but I would be remiss if I didn't address it now, and it kind of just ties in again to June and just, you know, a time of remembrance and honoring our history and where we want to go in love and peace as a country. That June 19th marks an important date in the ending of slavery in this country. And although for many, if you don't know, although the Emancipation Proclamation had been issued in 1863, slavery persisted in many areas of this country for about another 2 years. So it wasn't until June 19th, hence the abbreviated Juneteenth, of 1865 when the last of the enslaved people in America were finally received the notice from the Union Army that slavery had been abolished. And so many events happened throughout our communities to commemorate this historic day. I did want to share that in Lake County, there is an organization, the Ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, who support scholarship activities for students of Lake County, are hosting a virtual walk-run event, and it starts today, so June 1st through June 19th. I will share with Dr. Glickman to post as deemed appropriate all the details if anyone wants to form a team and support this 5K. It is a minor registration fee, so if it's something that the board wanted to do, we have to look at funding for that. But that concludes my board reports. Mr. Wheatman?
Thank you. The only thing I have is after last meeting, I participated in the bond sale for those remaining bonds that we had. They're actually a pre-sale for August. The winning bidder went to JP Morgan Chase. They won't be delivered until August of this year. Net savings of taxpayer dollars, I know it's only a little bit amount, but it is a small amount of savings nonetheless, was $57,000 over the time frame of this. So if you add this into what we did a few years back, that one was much bigger. It was, I want to say it was 4.3 million that we saved taxpayers by reissuing the bonds. So this is just another little bit that we've been able to save by reissuing these bonds. So we did that the other day, all locked in, all ready to go. They won't get sold till August though. And that's all I had.
I just have a few things. First of all, I wanted to thank Amanda for making the literacy materials available to us. I know she's not here, but it was fantastic to sit in a comfortable space and go through all of them. And I was so impressed with how well they reflect our strategic plan. I really loved there's a whole unit on the water cycle, so that made my heart very happy. And then there's another unit on seeing like an artist, which I thought was wonderful. And all different types of children in the books are represented. That it was really fun to look through them and I told Amanda it almost makes me want to go back into the classroom. So I thought that would, I really enjoyed looking at all this. So thank you for making those available to us. And then the other is that I mentioned at the last meeting that the CEC is taking a tour at Allendale. Allendale is an organization in Lake Villa that works with students who have sustained trauma over time, sustained trauma. And we'll be doing that June 13th at 10 a.m. if you're interested. If that time doesn't work for you, Jordan has offered to organize a different tour at a different time, if that's helpful. And then the last thing is we're at the end of another year, and it doesn't feel like this board has had a normal year at all. But I looked into the IASB workshops, and there are two that I thought we might consider taking together, mostly for the purpose of revisiting the decisions that we've made over the past few years and kind of taking a look at our process and reflecting and learning. But the two that I thought might be interesting, the first is called Reflect, Respond, Recover. And the second is just monitoring district performance. So I'll send an email to you if you want to take a look at the flyer that Laura Martinez sent on to me. But that is something that I would be happy to help coordinate if that's appropriate. I don't know if that's something, you did it last time, Linda. But if that's something the board is interested in doing over the summer or early fall, I would be happy to coordinate that and find a date. So you'll find an email tomorrow morning.
I just have one item, and I won't belabor the point because Christy Miller expressed it really well, but I also had the opportunity to review the new curriculum materials and was so impressed by everything for the same reason. The educator in me made my educator's heart very happy. Just to see the breadth of the materials, the depth of materials, the skill sets that are taught, and the support that's provided to teachers. So I was really excited to see it, and just, I know we thanked you all at the last meeting, but just wanted to reiterate how impressive your process was, your criteria, the way you went through the process, and what the end result was. I'm really excited to see what we do with it, and thank you for that legacy, Mr. Lewis. That's certainly going to be one of the many things that you leave us with.
I just wanted to say on the occasion of the last day of school today, take the opportunity to say thank you to all of our administrators, our staff, and especially our teachers. Educating our kids in normal times is not an easy endeavor. It's unpredictable and difficult and emotionally draining sometimes. We finished today our third not normal year in a row. The end of the year certainly started to feel a bit more normal, especially as it relates to COVID mitigations and perhaps some of the activities resuming that we were used to being associated with school. Even so, it's clear there's been an accumulation of trauma in all the constituencies of our school community. So I think a big thank you is in order for our administration, our staff, and our teachers for continuing to persevere. You all chose this noble vocation, I think, because there's some special stuff inside you. You teach, you care for, you nurture our kids. Yet I know this special stuff there's not a limitless well of it inside you. So I truly hope that this summer finds you some time to heal and rejuvenate. And thank you again for all you do for our kids. Thank you.
Jessica?
I would like to reiterate multiple thank yous that have already been said. I did also get to review the literacy materials and was impressed by what I saw, grateful for some of the themes, including the social emotional components that are woven throughout, which, as we know, need to be woven throughout the entire school day. I'd also like to thank and congratulate the retirees we celebrated a week ago, the past 3 years retirees, and then also thank the staff and parents as well for doing all the fun end of the year stuff that has been done recently, the field days, the exploration, discovery, imagination days, whatever they call it. And then the dog and suds last night was especially fun. I got to talk to some staff members and parents, and it was a great time. So thank you all who came out.
Okay. Next, we're up to the superintendent.
Well, I was going to begin talking about the end of the year, but Mr. LaCroix, you did such a beautiful job expressing yourself that I think I'm just going to let that stand. So thank you for that. And Jessica, thank you as well. There were a lot of fun things that happened over the past week. Totally agree. The only thing I want to add to the last day of school is it kind of was a bummer that we had telephone problems. That was a shame, and we did everything we could to communicate with families. We sent out messages to let families know that we were having this communication problem with our telephones. I can tell you we had folks on site today working on the phones, and we are hopeful that they will be up and running at some point tomorrow. They were kind of intermittently working today, so we're hoping tomorrow is better. Anything that either of my right-hand people want to talk about regarding this? Mr. Vipon, Mr. Halpern, anything you want to add?
Two things. We were just happy to rule out pretty early on that it wasn't anything on our side, but it was on our service provider's side. So then it was working with the vendor and getting them what they needed to continue working to resolve the problem. And the next piece is that the new phone proposal that we discussed and the board acted on a couple of meetings ago will build in multiple layers of redundancy going forward. So we'll have backup plans in place for backup plans. So that'll be nice going forward.
Thank you. And I will say that our community was very understanding about the fact that we were doing the very best we could. All right, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Lewis to talk about summer school.
So it seems kind of strange that we're just talking about the last day of school today, but we're getting ready for summer school starting on Monday. So we have 2 days of prep on Thursday and Friday this week, and we're going to be ready to welcome students into summer school experiences next week. So just a few little updates. I'm looking at my two friends across the room who are also in charge of summer school programs. We all agree that this year was exceptionally difficult, and mostly because of staffing. And so that is a common thread across the area about having not a significant pool of candidates or interested staff for summer school. And I think we all agree that as Mr. LaCroix, you shared, some of our staff just need a break and to step away. And so staffing was a significant challenge for all of the programs. And so much to the fact that we had to cancel some of our intended programs for summer school this year. And we did that a number of months ago because when we saw the candidates pool, we knew that we weren't going to be able to fill all the positions. And we didn't want to have students sign up for something that we weren't going to be able to actually pull through. So we do have a pretty significant program going starting on Monday at Park School. It's a combination of multiple programs. So the Summer Bridge program and our Adelante EL bilingual program will be at Park. And so first time we're using Park, at least in my memory, that we're using Park for summer. Part of that is based on construction and all the projects that are going on in different buildings that we're much appreciative of, but it made us have to look at building use a little bit differently. So we have approximately 145 kids who signed up for the Summer Bridge program, that's kindergarten through 7th grade, identified by their classroom teachers with needs for reading and math support. We have approximately 180 students in the Adelante EL program, and so those are students who have qualified for EL services in the past and would benefit from a continued support. And then we also have, so those are the two big programs at Park. And then we have also a small but mighty group for ESY, Extended School Year, that will be happening at Prairie View. And so that's for all the way from pre-K kids who've been enrolled in our early childhood program who would benefit from extra support, all the way through all of our students who would benefit from continued support based on their IEP and the IEP team recommendations. Am I saying all that correctly? And so one of the programs that we certainly hope will continue sometime in the future is our program called Jumpstart. If you remember, last year we got a late notice of a grant called GEAR that we were able to put in a Jumpstart kindergarten program. That was one that we did not get enough staff for us to consider that. So I'm hoping that the board will allow the administration to consider bringing that back at some point in time when staffing is not such a major question, as we do think that helping kids get prepared for kindergarten would be really a great experience for kids. And then our Title I program also was merged into the Bridges program. So we invited all the kids who used to come to our Title I summer school program just into the Bridges program. We knew we weren't going to be able to maintain programs separately, so we merged them together. So we're excited. Summer school is always a little bit of a different experience in that it's a little bit lower key, but it's still lots of academics focusing on literacy and numeracy.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Wilk has a few things to tell us about athletics.
Yes, I'm very excited to announce that in May, we had the IES track meets. In total, District 46 sent 13 state qualifiers to the state meets. Park Campus had 2 qualifiers. Isabella Bergonia qualified and placed 4th in the state in discus. And Adan Cordova took 2nd in the 1600, so the mile. From GMS, there were 11 qualifiers with a few students qualifying in multiple events. In the 4x400 relay, we had Jordan Sutter, Ava Petrosinski, yeah, I did okay. Ava Henny, and Madison Peterson, with an alternate, Natalia Arroyo. In the 1600 meter, Madison Peterson took 3rd in state. Madison Peterson also took 7th in state in the 800 meter. In the 4x100 meter relay, Evan Carabello, Akib Imtiaz, Dawson Burchetta, and Brajan Jenkins with a alternate of Steneth Jones. And in the 200 meter dash, there were 2 qualifiers, Dawson Burchetta and Kanye Pendleton.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woke. All right, Dr. Diaz is going to share some information about BPAC.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share that on the 26th of May, we held our first in-person BPAC event that since pre-pandemic. About 70 parents and children came, and we got to see a play called Don Quixote, written and performed by 2 teachers from Avon, Mr. Victor Garcia and Irene Plete. And then anyone who wanted to got to make a windmill out of straws and paper, which is a very important piece of the play, right? So it was just a lot of fun, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. I'm guessing we have a lot of board members who are somewhat familiar with Don Quixote, right? So we recognize the windmill. Wonderful, thank you.
I learned the phrase casi calvo from that play. Nearly bald. Nearly bald.
Wow. And finally, as we know, this Sunday is 8th grade graduation. At Grays Lake Central High School on the football field, we hope. Many of us continue to be watching our weather apps, which kind of change, by the hour, but we've made the decision that by 5 o'clock on Saturday, we will make the call as to whether or not we can plan for outdoor graduation or if we'll have to bring it indoors. And board, I did speak with Mr. Smith today just to confirm what time we wanted board members who are coming to be there, and he let me know that Parents have been asked not to arrive any earlier than 12:15 to take their seats, and he said really guests can show up anytime between 12:30 and 12:45. So that would be you, anytime between 12:30 and 12:45, just in time to get started. And then remember that we have a second graduation at 4 p.m., also at the same location for Park Campus. And that is the end of the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Again, this includes the personnel addendum we got earlier.
So moved.
A second.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. All right, next we're moving on to action items. First action item is a motion to approve the final 2021-2022, that doesn't look right. Should be 22-23 calendar. No? Oh, this is the. Yeah,
Right.
No, I'm sorry. Got ahead of myself. I'll do that next year. Motion to approve the final 2021-2022 school calendar. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Are people wondering why we're doing this? Since we just finished the year? Yeah, so we do this every year. Basically, it's what we planned and then what we did. And so this is, every year we have to approve, this is actually what happened, there were no emergency days, that kind of thing.
Do they actually have emergency days anymore?
We didn't.
All right, so the next item,
Oh,
wait,
I didn't.
roll call,
Yep,
sorry.
thank you.
I was getting there.
Weedman,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Albert.
Aye.
All right, so now I'll try this again. First day with new teeth, sorry. I need a motion to approve the purchase of the K-8 literacy resources that we saw last week, meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
All right, next is a motion to approve the purchase of 6 through 8 health resources that we saw last meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Albert,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. Next is to approve the Situational Awareness Program, ALICE, for the district. I'll make that a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Next is the motion to approve the purchase of kitchen equipment for the district. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next item is a motion to approve the CLIC workers' compensation renewal for the district.
So moved.
Second.
You want to, this is just the annual renewal, right? Okay. Anybody have any questions for Chris? Okay.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
And final action item is a motion to approve the CLIC property and casualty insurance renewal.
So moved.
I'll second. Again, this is just our annual renewal.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay, next we have no unfinished business on there. And we're up to new business, which would be the 2022-23 tentative budget. As he slowly creeps up to the microphone.
This is the tentative budget presentation for CCSD 46 for the tentative budget for the upcoming school year 22-23. District's mission, empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community. We're very familiar with that because we start every presentation with it, just a constant reminder. We're guided by our strategic goals, and the backbone of any good school district is our board policy. So we have to review, expand, and clarify financial practices to increase transparency and communication. And then we have our maintaining an operating fund balance of 25 to 30%, which is board policy 4:20. Here's the timeline of the budget. We discussed the preliminary budget on May 18th. We have the presentation this evening of the tentative budget, and it will be on public display from June 15th through July 30th. And it will be adopted at the public hearing on August 10th, and will be filed before the deadline on September 30th. This was a quote that I used last year, and I couldn't find a better one, so I just kept it. Totally honest with you. I believe we are continuing to do that every day with what we have. So what has changed since the preliminary budget 2 weeks ago? So we have our insurance renewals, which you have just renewed. Thank you for that. We have our updated information from open enrollment and our new hires. And currently the tentative budget is balanced, which is great, excluding payments from capital projects and debt service. I'll explain the difference between what an all funds difference is and the operating difference. And this includes a 3% increase for all staff. I just want to reiterate again, I know I did that in the preliminary budget presentation on May 18th, and it was in the memo. It's not an indication of the current negotiations with our unions. And any potential increase above 3% would result in an operating deficit and could potentially result in a budget amendment later in the year. So, current situation, we're still in the same position that we were in last year. We are still a Tier 1 district for the purpose of EBF and evidence-based funding with 65% adequacy. I did check this. It's the most updated information for the Illinois Report Card is 2021. And just a reminder, that's $17 million. So what does that mean? It means we have to fund the school district as we would if we were at 100% adequacy. So it's difficult for Tier 1 districts to do that if we were a Tier 4 district, which was 100%. So that is the difference between the gap between revenues and expenditures. And that's not my number, this is from the state of Illinois through their evidence-based funding formula. So the purpose of the additional funding is to eliminate the adequacy gap over many years. And I'll have a slide which will explain a little bit of that information, especially for districts like ours, which are tax capped. I have got the acronyms there, but it's the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, and we're also obviously limited to CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. So here are the actual increases that we've received since 2017. The 2017 number is the general state aid number that was the old general state aid before it became EBF, and that's what we have received. So as you can see, we're receiving $4 million extra per year than what we were receiving under the old general state aid formula in 2017. And that has gone a long way to reducing the adequacy gap, but it will take several years to do that. And what do you get for that? We should be proud of what we accomplish and what we have. We have excellent schools. Again, this is from the most recent Illinois Report Card data. So straight into the budget, this is the all funds, which includes capital projects, and it also includes payments from debt service. That means that we are including the deficit spending, which is year one expenditures of the 3-year priority capital plan that was approved in December. You'll see that number there, which is 2,220,044. You'll see that on the next slide. And this also includes debt payment service payments to pay for our 2020 debt certificates, which was for our solar initiatives. So where does that money go? As you can see, where does it come from? Here's a breakdown of the revenues. Expenditures is next. 60% comes from local taxpayers, meaning the levy. 29% comes from the state, which is the majority of that is EBF funding. And then the next group is federal funding, which makes up 8%. This is where the money goes. We have the breakdown of expenditures. 59%, close to 60%, goes to our staff in combined salaries and benefits. And a further 14% goes to purchase services. So what is that purchase services? It's GSF to do our night cleaning. It's Durham transportation to bring our kids safely to school. And it's ARVA to feed our children breakfast and lunch. And the final number is debt service payments, which is 13%, close to 13%, which goes to repay those bonds for our buildings, which were built 15 to 20 years ago. So here are some of the initiatives that we've included in the FY 22-23 budget. You recognize all these things because you've approved every one of them. These have all been board approved. We have the new phones and cameras at middle school that were approved by the board. We have the Alice Training Institute, which you just approved. And we have the new vehicle, which we are on a replacement cycle. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. That's the next slide. Indoor air quality improvements at Avon and the ADA bathrooms at GMS at the middle school, which is the bathrooms which are, that is for the Americans with Disabilities Act for GMS, and that is the 2,220,144. That is 1.4% above budget versus estimates, which I think is really good based on where we're at in the inflationary period with everything that we've got going on. Next slide is the phone system, which we've just talked about. We've just been brought approved in the last few weeks. The new security system at GMS and the new vehicle, which we replaced. You might recall we replaced 3 last year, and we're on a replacement schedule of replacing 1 per year. And the Alice Training Institute, which is the 26,000, which has just been approved. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up here what we do not include in this slide. We do not have the resources that we've just approved, the ELA and the health, because that is being paid from this fiscal year. That is ESSA funding, so it's considered to be this year's budget, although it will be implemented in the new school year. And then finally, we have the, what's the final one? That was the final one, I'm so sorry. So, next steps. Public display, it's not tomorrow, it's actually on the 15th. That's from last year's slide. Update as necessary any material changes through the hearing. So that is anything that we know significantly changes. And what would that be? Would be a change in negotiations. If we have any updates from negotiations, that would be updated in the public hearing, which would be the final budget. And then, obviously, I'll be bringing 5-year projections to the board and the finance committee as I have everything available to you. And that concludes the tentative budget presentation. Do I have any questions?
Just clarification. Chris, did you say that this will be posted tomorrow or it will not, the public display?
It's actually on June 15th.
June 15th.
I'm sorry, the slide says...
No, that's okay. I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure we all heard that. So June
Yes.
15th
Yep.
is when it will be public display. Okay.
Jason?
Mr. Wildman?
Yes.
You mentioned that the expense for the new literacy materials were hitting this year's budget. Will the matching revenues also be applied towards this year's budget, or was that a next year revenue source?
That's a great question. They will be applied to next year's budget in 23.
Okay. So at the end of next year, the fund balance is even, but there's a year-over-year matching problem.
Yes. and
Problem
that's
is the
kind of
wrong
the
word.
difficulty with all the ESSA funding, because it's spent in one quarter, it's received in the next. It's a great question.
Mr. Wildman, could you remind us what the adequacy percentage is to move tiers? Like, how close are we? I know you've said we are pretty close.
So it depends on what ISB states it is. I know we're very close. I believe it's between 65 and 68%. So as we receive the tier funding either this year or next year, we'll have to make sure that we may change to a tier 2. Now, what will that mean to us? It will result in half the tier funding for the following year. So we have, you look at those changes, it's close to $900,000 to $1 million. A change in tier funding would result in an additional $400,000 to $450,000. That would slow. I mean, those $1 million have been making up pretty quickly, but it would mean that we'd be close to $16 million if we were to change into 2024. That's a great question too.
Yes, thank you.
That prompted another question. And I don't want this to turn into an EBF discussion, because I don't think you're prepared for that, but if you could go back, I think it's the slide where you have the green bar and the adequacy target. So the formula that goes into determining adequacy is derived by, 27 elements or whatever it is now. I'm not sure if it's changed since I last heard, but in those aspects that determine adequacy, is it not true also that we're demographically and other ways we're continuing to see a bigger percentage of, say, our students as free and reduced lunch? In other words, isn't our adequacy continuing to get higher, but that green bar is also growing faster than our adequacy needs are growing?
I used to be able to calculate the old general state aid on a spreadsheet when I first started doing this. I couldn't tell you, and I don't think anybody outside of the state board can tell you with any clarity based on the calculations that take place through the cycle, what that's going to be. So with 27 different criteria, it really depends on where the state's at and where the other expenditures are at based on local adequacy. Yeah. So I wish I could give you an answer, but I can't because it's just too complex.
I think more generally, I think where my mind is at on this is that, we know that it's not good that we're tier 1 and that getting closer to adequacy is better, but we also know the impacts it's going to have on our revenues in future years. And I'm just wondering if maybe we're not as close to tier 2 as we think we are for that. So it's just something to think about, I guess.
So for the purpose of the projections that I presented in November, I presented that we were 2 years after this. So I believe I assumed 2025 we were going to change. I think that was correct. It's whatever happens, that will result in the change. So whatever happens, that will the impact in that year's budget, and there'll be the impact based on the projection. So I'll just have to be able to be conservative. I know we're close, and I'm just going to have to, whatever the number comes out as tier 2, if we're close to that, maybe we'll pull that forward based on that information.
Yeah. No, I understand that conservative mindset, so, okay. Thank you.
Also, Mr. LaCroix, as I was listening to you, I interpreted you to mean something else as well. Tell me if I had it wrong, but I thought you were also talking about how we may be getting closer to tier 2, but the needs of our students continue to grow. Is that also what you were alluding to?
That's primarily what I was alluding to.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I understood that, right. So we may be getting closer to adequacy, but the needs of our students for a wide variety of reasons continue to grow, therefore needing more services.
Yep, that's what I meant, and you said it much better. Thank you.
I guess maybe the question that I hear you asking is, does the state acknowledge that in the formula, right?
The formula does acknowledge it, right? If you have
like year
more
over
kids
year
with more needs, that's the point of EBF, as I understand it,
okay.
right? It's saying
so our percentage may not go up as quickly as we would think, because the number we need gets higher every year as well as what we have.
Right.
That's okay.
I think the underlying thought is that to get to 100% adequacy may take decades at this rate, and lots of school districts are encouraged to look locally because it is a measure of local adequacy. That's what it's saying. It's saying, what is the propensity, what's the capacity of the district to fund its own programming? And if there's a deficit, that's what the adequacy is. So it's going to be made up, but the state has not got the money to make that up in a short amount of time. It will take, at this rate, waiting for adequacy, many, many years to reach 100%.
When they started EBF funding back in, I think 18 is the first year they started it, we were at 62%. So we've gone up 3% in 5 years. And 1 year they were flat in our funding. So it's a very slow, it's a 50-year process at this point.
Decades, correct. Yeah.
Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. Now we are up to topics for future agenda items.
Yep. The June 15th meeting, we will start with a policy committee. I don't know yet if it will start at 6 or 6:30. 6 or 5:30. We're still assessing how long we think it'll take to discuss those different policies. Then there will be a public hearing to amend the fiscal year 22 budget, which is a regular process. And Chris, you're wanting that to start just right at 6:30, is that correct? Yeah, we'll just start the meeting with that. There will be a couple of other financial matters, transfer resolution, O&M to debt service. We'll have approval of publication of notice for public hearing for fiscal year 23 budget. That's what we were talking about before, so we'll have the board meeting on the 15th, and then the day after that will be when the notice goes in the paper, yeah? Okay. And then we also plan to do a strategic plan goals update for the board. And that is all that I have for the next board meeting.
Okay. All right. So next we are up to public comments.
Yes. Ms. Van Diglen?
Silver button, right? Okay. Off. Okay, there we go. So I know you're probably sick of seeing me, but after I talked about Alice and you talked about the training and everything like that, being a substitute teacher, I know it's kind of hard for your substitutes to do the training. And then unfortunately Uvalde happened, and so when I came into the schools the next day to sub, being terrified, but at the same time trying to figure out as a sub, what could we do better in the schools to help us because we don't get the training. A couple of things I'm hoping can fit into the budget plan. At GMS, there's no consistency throughout the schools in the district. At GMS, when I go to sub, I get a lanyard with a substitute pass, and I get a key, because all the doors are universal and use one key. So that if something happens, I can lock the door myself. I don't have to run next door and say, can you please lock my door for me when in an emergency? Whereas here at Frederick, I don't get a key. So the doors handles are unlocked all day long. And in that situation, I'm not gonna have time to go and scream, can somebody please lock my door? If I had a key on my lanyard, I would be able to lock it and protect the students. And then the next thing I was thinking about is, I don't have the training. I don't know if a teacher has a baseball bat somewhere in the classroom. I don't know what to do. But for me, what I think would help me is if there was a fire extinguisher in every classroom, I would know to grab the fire extinguisher and spray it at the active shooter, and that would disorient them, and also I would have something heavy that I could hit the active shooter with to try to stop whatever is happening, because I'm not getting the training. So those are a couple of things that I was thinking that might be within the budget that can help even the teachers in the classroom, but also substitutes that are coming into the classroom, because we're the same as, at least I am, I'm the same as the teachers. I'm constantly scanning the room of trying to figure out how I would get the kids out, how I would protect the kids, what could I throw, what is in the area, what is the lockdown drill, what are the code words, what are, and if I can't lock the door, it's terrifying. But I figured with a fire extinguisher, I could, even if they had a gas mask on, it would disorient them, and I could hit them and try to protect the students. So I'm just bringing these things up to see if they could fit in the budget to maybe help everybody in the district. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Next, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
I'll second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
Okay, so we will not be taking any action or giving out any more information after the closed session. We'll just be adjoining the meeting afterwards. So you are free to go, or you can sit here and wait for a couple hours for us to come back out and walk out. So, thank you very much.